All right, and welcome to FLOPBUSTER, a new episode, new setting for me, but we have some guests on as well. I'm joined here by my co-host Gabe, and there's two Gabes, so I screwed up right there. Just because the sight of two of them, they look like brothers, and they have the same
I can't
name.
tell them apart.
Yeah, it threw me off. I can't tell them apart. It's crazy having two Gabes on the show. Gabe and Connor, thank you for coming on to the show, guys. We're excited to have you on.
We're excited to be back. I speak for both of us when I say that we've been really looking forward to coming back on the show.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be a fun time.
Yeah.
I was waiting for somebody to say something. Gabe, he does this thing where, the floor is his to say something, and he doesn't say anything. And then he creates the awkward exchange.
Me?
Yes, you create – this happens all the time where I let me go ahead and I'll do a thing, or I'll introduce, I'll do the bit, and then there's dead silence because I'm obviously he needs to say something, and you sit there with your mouth gaping open, and you just look at everybody, and it's just like, is he going to say anything? Then you say something right when everybody's about to respond. Then you say something.
I just don't want to step on anybody's toes.
I get it.
Fair enough. It's fair enough. Cody, how's it going, man? Yeah, Lance Reddick passed away today. He was a true talent. I loved him. The Wire, The Guest. The guy's just a great character actor. He was really good at everything. Yeah. All right, so we brought you guys on to talk about our favorite 2000 summer blockbusters. Before we get to that, we were talking about it off camera, and these guys have a new episode out now on the Not That Bad podcast. You can check out. It's got Cody Leach in there. Really cool. I always listen to you guys on the commute wherever I'm going. So thank you for providing all that entertainment for me on the rides to work. When I'm dreading it, I get to listen to you two babble about not so great movies. So
you're flattering us, Tony. You're flattering us. Thank you.
Tony has told me that I have a really bad taste in movies. So,
Yeah.
Well, hey, that's our show's the perfect breeding ground for that. We're going to be happy to welcome you back as soon as we can. But
we're like a leper colony.
Yeah, we're like we will infect everyone.
I think if you guys bring Gabe back on your show and he really shows the shitty movies that he watches, you guys would probably ban him from the show or create an all new show and just cancel Not That Bad, because you'll realize.
For sure. For sure.
Your taste in movies were not that bad.
Oh, hey,
Once he makes you watch The Pest, or I don't know, Freddy Got Fingered, wherever the bullshit that he's considering cinema that week.
No, it's like some C grade, old style, the Princess and the Barrio Boy, stuff like that, where it's you don't know anybody, and it's just some random, Mexican movie.
Yeah. Maybe we'll do a mystery movie. We'll do a monthly mystery movie. Or I guess we'll just spring a movie. How would that work? We would have to have seen the movie. We'll workshop this idea, but I think we're on something.
All right, so I think we should honestly. Let's get started. I didn't really give you two any parameters when it came to this idea, because I kind of just want to see where everybody's at. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to start with you two on the bottom of the screen. Oh, by the way, for anybody that does join us, because it is St. Patrick's Day, everybody's out and about. But if anybody does want to call in, that's Gabe's number at the bottom of the screen. And you could tell us. You could call in and tell us what your favorite 2000 summer blockbuster is. And Gabe will answer, and then you'll have his number. So if you run into an issue, you could text Gabe. You need money. Yeah. Somebody's, pulling credit card fraud on you, whatever it is, so he'll pick up the phone.
This is how a Scream sequel starts.
Yeah.
Gabe would be good in a Scream sequel. I feel like you would make the right decisions. Do you think you would make the right decisions?
I think I would. I think I've watched enough. I think I'd survive.
I trust you. We're from Chi-Town. We represent. You know what it is.
Just don't make me run. That's all. As long as I don't get to run. I'm a slow runner.
Ghostface is all about it's all about mental gymnastics with him. He is a runner though, so I don't know. You might be fucked if he starts running at you.
Listen, the NFL Combine just happened, and I know my 40-yard dash would not be anywhere near like a 4 point. I'm gonna be conservative here and say I'm about a 7.2, maybe running a 40-yard dash.
That's fair enough. All right, so for Connor and Gabe, whoever wants to go first, let's start us off. What's a movie that you think of when you think of 2000s summer blockbusters?
Yeah, you want me to start off, Connor?
Go ahead, Mr. Tice.
Because I wanted to bring a little spice, a little flair.
Oh, no.
Because, just bring the guys from Not That Bad for your typical kind of like fluff piece, right?
Oh, no.
Oh, The Dark Knight. Oh, Iron Man. So I will have one like legit, really great blockbuster that I love, and then one not that bad one. So I'll start non-controversially, right? And I'll start with one that I think everybody agrees is great, Spider-Man 2. That is, to me, still the premier superhero movie, even after all of the Marvel films, the MCU films, and, there have been really solid entries in that genre, but nothing to me is still tapped in to the heart and the spirit of its comic book origins like Spider-Man 2. I think you could say a similar thing for Spider-Man 1, which is like a close runner-up, but Spider-Man 2, it just really has that pathos that's not only I loved it as a kid, but I love it even more as an adult because of the themes that are intertwined with all of the spectacle and all the action. And also, I think just Alfred Molina as Doc Ock, he is still my favorite Spider-Man villain on screen, even more so than Willem Dafoe. That might be controversial, but he took a character that was very two-dimensional and gimmicky from the comics and just gave it all of that heart and that edge. So yeah, that's my first choice.
Now I'm anticipating what this controversial pick is, because I'm like running in my head, like, well, what would it be?
Well, we'll see.
Is it Sahara with Matthew McConaughey? Maybe it's that. I don't know.
That is not a blockbuster. More than 5 people need to have seen it.
That's the biggest. Hey, it's the biggest bomb of all time. It's I think it cost like $150 million. So somewhere out there, somebody's.
Was this a hero? It wasn't John Carter. Disney's John Carter.
John Carter was also a huge flop.
I don't think any movie has bombed to the amount that Sahara has. I think it made like 10 million worldwide or something like that.
That's bad.
Pretty crazy.
Even John Carter, I think, broke 25 million. But
damn,
I think John Carter made it. It must have made at least 200 million with that. I doubt that it had to be as bad as Sahara. But I want to.
It killed Taylor Kitsch's career, though. That's what it did.
Yeah, I'll say something controversial. I think John Carter, not that bad. Not that bad of a movie.
Whoa.
Decent movie.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. You are now pandering.
Okay.
You can't never say that my movie picks are bad.
John Carter is not bad. John Carter is not bad. Is it worse than, what else was he fucking in? Battleship? Is it worse than Battleship? No way.
Yes.
And Gabe probably likes Battleship. So
I do like Battleship. We got Riri in there. Don't talk bad about a movie with Riri.
Oh man.
So okay, Spider-Man 2. I mean, yeah, that's like one of the big picks, I feel like. And you bring up something interesting that I feel like later in I agree with you. As an adult, I appreciate it a bit more. One, it feels like a real movie. He's going through like real shit, which he does in the comic books too. It's very Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, but Sam Raimi is such a big fan of the character, and you feel that in every frame of the movie. If Spider-Man 1 is, this perfect sort of 3-act structure origin tale, Spider-Man 2 is as good as a superhero movie can get altogether. And I love it. And of course, the MCU movies they're a lot of fun. They're cool. There's something about Spider-Man 2 that you feel everything that Parker is going through, and it has one of the best villains like ever. So, not a controversy. Like, that's a legit one. It would have been one of the picks that I would have thrown up there for sure.
So you stole it, Gabe. Thanks, man.
He stole it. He stole it.
I've been meaning to rewatch.
I came
these
this close
movies.
to saying Spider-Man 3, but
no, that's controversial.
Well, that would be two
and really
picks,
didn't really let me go with that.
No, and it's funny. Like, you bring up Spider-Man. Like, I know my co-host is a big Sam Raimi guy, especially the Spider-Man films. I told him, and I've been telling him, that I've been really meaning to rewatch those because I think as I've gotten, like, I fell into superhero fatigue way before anybody else did. I feel like I gave up on those movies long ago, and I have barely seen any of them for a while. But it's made me appreciate some of these older films more because there's less, there may be less, big budget effects, and there may be less pomp and circumstance, if you will. But there's this sense of heart that I feel like so many of the Marvel movies that I was watching, I missed out on, that I really need to go back and rewatch these. So I'm glad to see it appear on here. All it has done is reminded me how much I need to go back and rewatch these Spider-Man films. Maybe with the exception of 3. We'll see. I don't know.
No, watch 3. Watch 3.
It's 3.
I don't respect anybody who skips 3. I just
well, I got to keep the respect up, I guess. So I guess I'll watch all
Spider-Man 3.
If you can watch Star Wars Episode 2,
all right, don't you be talking shit about Star Wars now.
That's true. I would agree with that. Listen, Spider-Man 3. As a kid, when I saw that movie, and I was so hyped, and I walked out of it going, "That's like the greatest fucking thing ever." Yeah. I had no idea the internet and like all these neckbeards hated the fucking movie up until I talked to my uncle. And I was so excited that I had seen the movie. And
he's throwing shots at my neckbeard over here.
He's like, "That movie's terrible. You have bad taste. What do you know? You're like 12 years old." So I was like, "Oh shit!" Like I started thinking, like, "Is it a bad movie? There's no way this is a bad movie." But as an adult, I can tell you, it is not a bad movie. Everything that anybody has said that makes it bad is like done tongue in cheek. So I don't know. It's
you
pretty
could
awesome.
Say it's not that bad.
It's not that bad. Not that bad. Before Gabe goes on a tangent about Spider-Man 3 hatred, Travis, how's it going? I personally have found that as I get older, Spider-Man 3 resonates with me and adults in general. It has the best emotional core with the internal, external forgiveness and the best third act. Ooh, I like that. I like that.
That's a
In
lot.
my opinion, Spider-Man 2 is actually the weakest.
That's a hot take.
I don't like the direction this is going.
Gabe approves of that. Yeah.
That's a hot take right there.
Go ahead, Gabe. What were you gonna say? You were going on about Spider-Man 3 being bad.
No, I just the whole Gap commercial in the middle of the movie just throws me off.
That's the best part of the movie.
Topher Grace as Venom is definitely not.
That's the hardest part for me. Yeah.
Yeah, listen, I love Topher Grace. I love Take Me Home Tonight and the 70s Show. Some of the stuff that he's done, but him as Venom was not believable at all.
To me, that's the clearest part of Raimi not liking Venom at all, like making him a joke.
I think the idea of Eddie Brock starting as this dweeb who needs the symbiote to be any kind of threat, any kind of formidable person, I think it's kind of an interesting idea. I don't think people were ready for Venom the Incel back in 2007. People aren't ready for that now, but it's a valid interpretation for me, especially because Venom is just there to really represent the darkest parts of Peter. Everything he's going through in that movie emotionally. So I don't care. I still think the Sandman is like one of the best looking movie villains of the 2000s. I just wish they could have nailed his character a little bit more, but some really great effect sequences in that for sure. You know what? Yeah, let me take that away. Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 3.
Oh, there you go. I'll take it. I'll take it.
Wow.
I respect it.
Connor, what about you, man? What's your pick? What's your number one?
Well, Gabe went a little predictable for me here because I had a feeling Spider-Man was going to appear on his list. So I'm going to go a little predictable myself. And I'm going to pick Star Wars Episode 3. I think summer 2005, this movie drops. And for me, it was like the biggest thing of my childhood. I grew up with the prequel trilogy. Spoiler alert, I'm in the cusp generation in between millennials and Gen Z. So I'm one of the people who this pandered to. And it worked, man. The emotions of it, the spectacle of it, it feels like the biggest Star Wars film to date for me, as far as like the scope of the production and everything that they put into the movie. It just feels like you know, as much as Empire is the best movie, which it very clearly is for me, this is one that I think doesn't get as much appreciation from the old heads of Star Wars and the Disney folk, who, you know, it just sort of falls in the middle. And I think it deserves more appreciation, and it meant the world to me as a kid. So gotta throw some love out there for Revenge of the Sith.
No, and I think you're right. I didn't enter Star Wars fandom until later in my life. And so when I watched them in chronological order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. And I love the prequels. And 3 from the prequels, and on a hot take here, I love the prequels a lot more than I love the original stuff that came out in the 70s.
Okay.
Just because I got much more, like, that it got me invested into the entire Star Wars thing.
That's what got it started for you.
That's what got it started for me. So, like, yeah, I know, like, the old heads are like, oh, you know, 4, 5, and 6 are amazing. And I get it. Yeah, they're good. But what 1, 2, and 3 came out, and, like, they set up the whole universe for me, at least. I was like, 3 was just, I agree with 3. 3 is one of the best.
No, I think 3, I felt how big it was. I remember seeing the posters at AMC like a year in advance. And all it was like Anakin. That's it. That's all you needed was him completing his journey. I haven't seen that movie in a very long time, but it felt like the biggest movie ever when I saw that in theaters. From the cereal to the plug-in TV games, the action figures. And I think it's a really solid movie with some pretty highlight Star Wars moments. On paper, I feel like that whole trilogy sounds amazing. I mean, say what you will about George's like execution. I think that's like up to debate, and people can say it's the worst, it's the best, it's fine. But I think the third one is, for me, the strongest out of those 3, and feels like he completed what he was trying to tell. So, I mean, and he kills a bunch of kids. So that part rules, man.
Well, we got a glimpse into Tony's psyche.
He kills the younglings.
Okay.
Plug and play Revenge of the Sith. Yes, that's what it was. It was great.
Yeah.
I know. I think Revenge of the Sith is like the closest that our generation has to like a Lawrence of Arabia type of thing, where it's not just a blockbuster, right? It is like this pivotal moment for pop culture, that it's mammoth-sized, but it's also accessible. You know, I mean, you know, whether you love it or hate it, everybody has had Revenge of the Sith just sort of like burned into them, because that's how much of a cultural footprint it left. You know, we love it for the memes, but we also love it for the actual things it does well. Unironically, I mean, I rewatched it and I was quite impressed with how a lot of things held up. And we all remember some of the more laughable moments. You know, from my point of view, the Jedi are evil. You know, those moments aren't what make the movie. What makes the movie are, you know, the amazing worlds, you know, the really fantastical action sequences that, I mean, now I remember why I was so taken with this movie. And when I was a kid, I didn't even know you could do this with motion picture technology. It really was a completely transportive movie. And at the heart of it, I think you have one of the most fascinating character arcs in all of Star Wars, how Anakin falls to the dark side. And again, barring some lines of dialogue, I actually am really happy with how Hayden Christensen and George Lucas pulled that off. So I'm all for it. That's literally on my list, Connor. So talk about stealing.
Well, well, it's funny too, because like when we covered both episode 1 and 2 on our show, and one of the things that our Gabe said was that Star Wars is so much about nostalgia. That's what it's built on. And so it's kind of refreshing to hear FLOPBUSTER Gabe talk about how that's your favorite line of the Star Wars movies, because that's what got you started. Like, that's how I feel about the original trilogy. Like, I think of my early childhood when I think of watching the VHS of episodes 4, 5, and 6. So, you know, even though I grew up with those are my movies, but I love hearing that perspective, because, hey, that's how you were introduced to Star Wars. So that's what makes you feel good. And episode 3, I feel like is towards the top of the list for many people. So,
which hopefully. I hated that little kid that played young Anakin was like so hated on. I was like, why are they hating on this little
Jake Lloyd?
People hate Jake Lloyd, man. I hate that he got death threats for that. It's like, the kid's just
such
doing
a
his
sad
job.
story.
And I think he did his job the best he could. I don't think he did a particularly bad job. I think most of it could be blamed on George Lucas's writing, and that's coming from somebody who's a big fan of him. There's so many Star Wars tragedy stories of just like, you know, fans that destroyed their lives. The guy who played Jar Jar Binks, Ahmed Best, is another one. It's just sad.
Yeah, and to be clear, even if Jake Lloyd was as bad as people say,
please do not give a kid death threats.
Any of the hate that came his way personally.
Right,
absolutely.
And I think that goes for actors in general. And I think people should really be more careful with the way they talk about films now that we have things like social media. But Jake Lloyd, man, like, I wanted a formal apology from people like, I don't know, Red Letter Media, and I love those guys, but they are totally complicit in everything that we're talking about here. So that's a sidebar, but you know, I have to get that off my chest when we're talking about anything Star Wars related.
I agree. Bernie, how's it going, man? Those posters were cool.
The posters,
and then the posters were great. And then Travis, I had the Vader controller. Those were big for like 3 years. Those plug and play things. Bernie's favorite is A New Hope. I mean, hey, it does it for me too. I love A New Hope.
Hey, I get it.
Original Gabe. What is your pick?
Gabe OG.
So you already know where I'm going to go with this because you were hating on me. But you know what?
I don't.
Movie? Yeah,
I don't remember.
Okay. You know what movie was huge in 2008? It was everywhere, and that was Twilight. And listen, I know they get bashed within like the horror genre. They get bashed like everywhere. You know, Tony's homeboy there, Patterson. He hates the movies now, right? Kristen Stewart, whatever. But you know what? Those movies in 2008, they were so huge, especially being based off the books. They were just everywhere. Like, especially the first one. It's like the biggest love story ever. And then it started the whole, you know, are you taking Jacob or, you know, the other guy? I forget his name. But it was
so you're a big fan of this movie then.
You know what? I know, and still am, because I actually rewatch this trilogy about once a year. I don't know why, but I do watch the trilogy about once a year, and I enjoy it. I have a fun time with it.
Wait, so do you not watch the last two? You just watch the first three?
What do you mean? Oh,
there are 5.
Oh, breaking down part 1 and 2. Yeah.
You know what? I watch all 5 of them.
Okay.
So
I respect it.
No, the first one, the first one I thought was actually really, really good, and I enjoyed it.
I think Gabe thinks that like I have this hate on for Twilight. Let me give some backstory. I do not hate Twilight. The first movie I watched when it came out, I watched the second one and the third one, and I like didn't really have many like deep opinions on any of them. I thought the first one was fun. Didn't think much of the second or third one. Him and Victoria annoy me to no end about rewatching these movies and making he tries to pitch why we should do videos on these movies. I'm like, well, I don't understand why we need to, or like any of that. So I do not hate Twilight. Gabe and Victoria would not stop talking about Twilight for like every single week we would record the show when he would come by. It was just, oh, you should rewatch Twilight. You should rewatch it. And like, I do not hate Twilight. So I wanted to throw that out there.
If I'm getting this right, Twilight did not create the monster. Victoria created the monster that hates
Victoria
Twilight. Yeah, okay, got you.
Victoria and Gabe. And then Victoria's friend, who we let her come and visit, and she was incredibly rude. And I have this bad memory of Twilight now because she wanted, instead of going out, we wanted to go out and drink. She wanted to stay in my apartment and watch Twilight. Oh. And she broke my thermostat. So like I was pretty mad about that. That's why I'm like, you know what, fuck Twilight.
You have every right. You know what? You have every right. You have every right.
Yes. So I got every right to be mad about the Twilight debate. Damn, y'all got Owen Wilson.
Wow.
You know what? I don't know if maybe.
I see the resemblance.
A little bit.
We don't all look alike. Us white folks with blonde hair, we don't all look alike.
Oh my God!
Return of the Jedi ending with Luke taking a chance on the Ewoks, allowing them to win the the day once again. The saga teaching us that when we take a chance on the ones no one else would.
Hell yeah, Travis.
Yeah, hell yeah. I don't have the deepest opinions on like Star Wars in general. I feel like I walk out of every movie, I'm like, that was fun. And like that's really like as deep as like I was obsessed with Revenge of the Sith because again, it was everywhere.
Phenomenon.
So the toys were everywhere. I was the right age. I was like 10 when that came out. So like it made sense to be obsessed with that at that moment. But like I don't know, I don't hate the Disney films. I didn't like Rise of Skywalker like at all, but like I liked Last Jedi. I liked the Force Awakens. Rogue One I really enjoyed. So
yeah, and to Gabe's point too, like Gabe from FLOPBUSTER, as
we
much
have to
as
figure this out. Okay,
yeah, on our show we did
G.
Mr. Tice.
How about that?
Yeah,
or you can call me Mr. Tice, Mr.
Yeah.
Mr. T.
Mr.
Yeah,
T.
how about that, Mr. T?
Mr. T.
Let's to Gabe's from FLOPBUSTER's point, as much as Revenge of the Sith was like a cultural, it was a part of 2005 to like no end. When you think of 2005, that's one of the first things that comes up when you think of movies. Twilight is the same way, whether you like it or you don't like it. It was unavoidable. The commercials were everywhere. The posters were everywhere. Team Jacob and Team Edward t-shirts that girls were making from like t-shirts from Michaels were everywhere. So it's funny. Like I'm not a big Twilight fan myself. I don't hate on it, but I don't, it's just not my thing. However, I think he raises an excellent point where it's just like, sometimes even movies that people don't appreciate should be recognized for like the cultural phenomenon that they were, which I appreciate it being brought up here for that reason. Just like I brought up Revenge of the Sith, which many people probably don't like.
No, and I think when you think about like blockbusters, right? Like looking back, right? Like blockbusters nowadays, yeah, they're big and we think of big budgets. And at this point, you just think Marvel or DC, right? As your blockbuster. Once in a while, you'll get, like Top Gun Maverick comes up along and, it's a huge blockbuster thing, right? But also Top Gun it was cultural. Last summer, Top Gun was a cultural movie. Like everybody wanted to go see it. Everybody, talked about it. You couldn't go by without a day hearing about something about the news about Top Gun. And when you look at the movies in the 2000s, is there were a lot of blockbusters, but there was also some years like Twilight, like Star Wars, that it was just a cultural phenomenon that nobody would stop talking about these movies. And it didn't matter if you were young, old, a teenager in your 20s. People wouldn't stop talking about them. I know old ladies that were talking about Twilight. It was just like
I just picture Gabe at some club being like 20 years old. Jason Derulo's like on the radio DJ or something, and he's like, "Hey, you want to go back to my place? I got Twilight on DVD."
Bro, I hope Jess isn't on this right now, right? But I would honestly be texting girls on my little flip phone like, y'all want to come over and watch some Twilight? I want to come over and watch some Twilight. I got Twilight.
So Bernie was asking, side note, what's everybody's favorite Ninja Turtle? I'll answer because I'm a huge Turtles guy. Raph would be my answer. That's Travis's answer right here too. He said Raph, and he loves Casey Jones as well. And yeah, those would be my picks. I love Raph. He was I bought my parents probably bought me every Raphael figure ever. When the TV show was gone, the 03 series. So
I always want to answer Leonardo because I thought Leonardo was cool with the swords. But the older that I get, the more I realize I'm a Michelangelo because I'm immature as fuck. And I'm like, yeah, Michelangelo is probably be my favorite one at this point. With April being my favorite character. She was my first cartoon crush back in the day. From the 1990s TV series.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
Do you have an opinion on this, Connor?
Yeah. So my favorite stems from the Game Boy game I had growing up. My favorite character to play as was Donatello, so that's who I'm going with.
Interesting. Even though he only had a staff.
Yeah, he was the most fun in the game. I don't know what to tell you. I didn't grow up like the biggest Ninja Turtles guy. I'm very, 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 very excited for the movie coming out and support lots of things happening with said film. However,
very open-minded, my co-host is.
My favorite character was always Donatello because of the purple, and then because of he was most fun to play in the Game Boy game that I had growing up, which I'm very nostalgic about. So that's my pick.
Cool. And to answer Bernie's question real quick, before Other Gabe answers, Other Gabe is part of Not That Bad. So this is Other Gabe.
So when he's on our show, he is Other Gabe. When I'm on their show,
Mr. T,
I'm the Other Gabe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Other Gabe feels a little dehumanizing, so that's why.
Now you know how it feels, you bastard.
And real quick, my favorite is also Donatello because his staff is not his true weapon; his mind is.
You
exactly.
Son of a bitch. All right,
exactly. Okay, I guess I'll go with my answer. Mine's always been the same, and I feel like consistent for years on years and years. It's Bad Boys 2. I think Bad Boys 2 is one of the best action movies of the 2000s. I used to go with my dad. We would go, they're not even around anymore. When did dollar shows stop existing? I used to go with my dad at the dollar show. We'd go see like Bulletproof Monk and like whatever else was playing, or like Charlie's Angels Full Throttle and like whatever else was there. We'd see like 2 movies at a time. And Bad Boys 2 was one of them. And I remember like as a kid, I thought it was like the greatest fucking thing ever because one, it's like rated R. It's ultra violent. They're like doing great car chases and stuff. All the helicopter shots and the Michael Bay 3D camera movement, like all those things are just like the movie just looked cool. As a kid, it looks like this is what like an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old would make as an action movie, except it was made for like $200 million with like the world's biggest movie star. So, and even today when I watch it, I could quote that movie endlessly. I still think it's the best Bad Boys movie. And the Reggie scene, you're exactly right. The Reggie scene is classic.
So when you went to the theater with your dad, did you have a Coke and a smile?
Yeah, I did.
Nice.
And Joey Pants. You know what? We can't forget the great Joey Pants. He was
with hair,
amazing. And he had hair. He's great in these movies. I love that guy. So.
No, I think Bad Boys. I mean, come on, it's Will Smith and Martin Lawrence at that time. Martin Lawrence's height of his powers. Will Smith was already a huge star, but man, that movie was so cool to see. Just the swagger it has. That's what that movie had. It had swagger before swagger was even a word. It was just it oozed like I don't know, hip hop. It was like an urban movie, but like made for like everybody. It wasn't like Soul Plane, right? Or stuff like that, where it was just it was made. Let's be honest, it was made. Soul Plane was made for like urban people and shit like that, right? And I
know. I'm thinking. You mentioned that, but it's true though because
he's right. Yeah.
No, I think of movies at that time period that were like it was like the studio was billing it that way.
Yes.
Like here's Cookout. Here's
right. I got the hookup.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Chris Rock once said that black people don't have movies; they have locations. Car wash, barber shop. They don't get real movies.
They're movies that are made to be replayed on UPN.
Right. Like I sounded bad, but I mean, at that point in time, that's how movies were being portrayed to us. It wasn't all about inclusivity and we're including everybody. Right. You had black movies, you had white movies, and then once in a while you had movies like Bad Boys,
which was just cool. It was just
cool.
Like
everybody wanted to shit. It was Will Smith. Will Smith was friendly to everybody, and then you had at that point Martin Lawrence, who was still doing somewhat, black movies, and Will Smith got him, and he transitioned over. That's how you had Martin Lawrence doing like that Basketball Night movie or all these, Big Mama's House and all these.
Oh, what was that? No, that movie's called Black Knight, I think.
Yeah, Black Knight, whatever. But that's what made Bad Boys so cool is everybody joined in on that fun, and Michael Bay did so much. And I'll talk about Michael Bay when it's my turn to pick again. But Michael Bay just did a phenomenal job with that movie.
No, I want to agree with you there because there was a movie that I really wanted to mention on this list, but it's definitely not considered a blockbuster, and it's called Hot Fuzz. They in that movie joke about how great Bad Boys 2 is, and it made me think like, man, I need to rewatch Bad Boys 2. And I agree with you, Tony. I think it is the best of the Bad Boys films. I don't think that's a very controversial statement either. I just think it does everything that the first one did better, and it raises the stakes. It does everything better, and it's funnier. It's a great pick. I knew it was going to come up because it was in the thumbnail, but I'm glad that it was brought up because just some of the action sequences. If anybody out there has not checked out Corridor Digital's channel before, they do videos of like stuntmen reacting to cool stunt pieces, and one of those is covers Bad Boys 2. I really recommend checking those out for some cool stunt insights about that movie, but it just makes you appreciate the action in it even more. Solid pick.
Thank you. And I got to say the another highlight of that movie is the shootout with the Jamaicans, the Jamaican gang, and it's like going through the walls and stuff. It was all things that like people made fun of Bay for doing, but now the internet is like, he's in a tour, like cool, like cool. Like I fucking loved Ambulance, so it's fine. I like that Bay is like getting this whole renaissance of like people just fucking loving him at this point. I think it started with Bad Boys. I feel like critics, they piled on that movie, but at that time where, controversy and stuff, you have to like really look it up, like what people were saying on the internet. Now, like you kind of can't avoid it if you're a part of this space. But then it felt like everybody knew Bad Boys 2 was like cool. Like you could quote it, you talk about it, it's always playing on TNT or FX or whatever it is. And yeah, I love it. That's going to be probably the best Bad Boys movie. And I think it's because it's not in on the joke. I think part 3, as fun as it is, it's like winking at the audience knowing what we come to expect from it. So,
and it has that iconic Bad Boys song. Like everybody always sings that.
It's one of the best songs.
Period. It's one of the best ever made.
Agreed.
It is. It's one of the best. I think that's why Bad Boys 3 is not a 5 out of 5. It's a 4.5 out of 5. They didn't use the song of that movie. That was I kept waiting for it. I'm like, all right, when are they going to play? I'm not talking about Bad Boys by P. Diddy. I'm talking about the song. The second.
I hope everybody knows.
The one you got from Cops, like the 1990s TV show Cops. I don't know if you guys ever watched Cops, but
they ruined the song, man. Yeah, they ruined the song. Okay, let's go back to Gabe, Mr. T. What is your next pick?
I'm really glad you brought a Michael Bay movie because that perfectly transitions into my not that bad blockbuster. Which,
The Island.
Actually, that's really good. That's just straight up good. And it's a little too underseen to really qualify as a blockbuster. Now I'm going with another huge cultural milestone and a movie I loved a lot as a kid for sure. The first Transformers movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
This guy.
I acknowledge all the flaws, and I acknowledge the direction the series went after that first movie, which was not great. But I'm not going to punish the first film for that because whether it be Steven Spielberg's influence or just Michael Bay, wanting to create that kind of a movie that would be accessible for all families. So we kind of toned down some of his more, let's say, abrasive stylistic choices and really made something that was just a full throttle science fiction action epic. I'm going to use the word epic because that's how it felt to me as a kid. I couldn't believe some of the stuff I was seeing in the last act of that movie. I've heard people say that there's no grace to the way that Michael Bay handled this movie. It's just like, metal robots punching each other. And I disagree. I think there are several iconic shots, like that one where I think it's Optimus Prime. He's kind of like roller skating through the street and he kind of pummels that one Decepticon off the ground. Just so many like great cinematic moments, like hero moments, that really elevate the movie beyond, I think, what people seem to give it credit for. It's Shia LaBeouf is problematic, and the way Megan Fox is used is problematic. But I watch it the way I watch like a Godzilla movie, like a kaiju movie. I mean, nobody ever talks about the human characters in those, whether they be good or bad, because that's not why we're there. When the Transformers take control of the movie, when it's their movie, I think it's a beast. And one quick thing I'll say in defense of the more human element is I think the idea of it starting as a sort of like a boy in his car, right? And then this random innocent kid is kind of thrown into this, cyberspace, kind of space epic, whatever you want to call it. That was the screenplay has faults, but it did that one thing really right, and I think it set up for just one of the most fun movies that I watched as a kid.
Cool. I'll give. I mean, we got to give Gabe the floor then, because he's yeah.
The man cheered.
Listen, I am. I'm gonna say I'm obviously the oldest one here, right? So I remember watching the cartoons. I remember when I was a kid crying. Spoiler alert here: if you've never seen the Transformers movie from 1986, 85, when Optimus Prime dies in that movie, ugly cry, right? Just ugly cry. I got the Steelbook, which, by the way, is an amazing 4K remaster of that movie. Anyways, when I saw Transformers on the big screen, I legit wanted to cry. Like, it was like my childhood in real life. When you're talking about Optimus Prime, when he comes on screen and it's your first, motion picture version of Optimus Prime on screen. I saw it in IMAX, and you just see this huge transform, Optimus Prime just transform. I'm just like, I was transformed back into a little kid. And that's as much as you said that, they took so many things out of the franchise. I love the franchise. Like, I love every single movie of it, because all these movies transform me back to, little Gabe. Like, I'm just like there, and I'm just amazed. Like you said, I watch these movies not for Megan Fox, which she's lovely to look at, not for, Josh Duhamel, none of the human characters. I watch them for the actual Transformers. I watch them to see them transform, and I watch them to see them fight each other, which is what the cartoon show was just robots beating up on each other. Yeah. But this franchise is one of, to me, and especially the first one, it was just like my childhood, just, on the big screen, and I loved it for it, and I still love it for it. I'm excited for Beast Wars when that comes out, because, Beast Wars was another, part of my childhood. And going back to the one with like Grimlock, when like Optimus Prime rides Grimlock and they're going through this small Asian town, just destroying everything. There's another part, like I'm left in like this childhood, like awe and wonderment. I was like, God damn, that's fucking cool. Optimus Prime is riding Grimlock through fucking battle. But yeah, I love these movies, and I love the first Transformers movie.
Cool. Yeah, Connor, actually. Yeah. Oh, or Gabe, sorry.
I'm so sorry. I just wanted to say one thing that Gabe reminded me of. I always wish that Josh Duhamel was the lead in the first Transformers. And I just really gravitated to his presence, I guess. He was so laid back compared to a lot of the other human characters that were like, they were wacky and cartoonish and kind of in your face. I think if somebody like Josh Duhamel had been the lead there, I think the movie would have a more solid reputation overall. But yeah, Connor, I'm curious.
They probably would have, and I'm sorry again to interrupt you, but I think that my only issue, and if I could find something wrong with this entire series, was just how big the military presence was. The American military presence was. It's like,
oh yeah,
like it was, everything was like secret, like CIA stuff, Sector 7. I'm like that's too much. Like it's showing like the like warheads, and I'm like, I don't know. The cartoons weren't really all that fucking, military fucking centered. And I would totally agree, if they made Josh Duhamel's character more of the main character, it would have worked completely different. But yes, go ahead.
Yeah, what about you, Connor? We've never talked Transformers, to my knowledge.
No, that we brought it up very, very briefly when when Gabe was on our show talking about Battle Los Angeles, because it was very Michael Bay-esque in a lot of ways. It felt like somebody watched the Michael Bay movie, took notes for about 5 minutes, and then made a movie. No, I didn't hate that movie.
It was made by his protege.
Yeah, it was. Yes,
Jonathan Liebsman,
yes,
right? Yeah,
Jonathan Liebsman. Yep. But truthfully, Transformers has always been funny to me because I appreciate the hell out of those movies and what they were able to accomplish. I've just never connected with them. And it makes me sad because like I was, for lack of a better term, prime age when this came out to like really dig this movie. But it never hit that point where it connected with me. None of them have. I watched the first two, I watched part of 3, and then I just didn't watch another one. And I don't know how many there are now. I heard they're going to do a spinoff of some kind too. I don't know. But what I can say is like what they were able to accomplish with the visual effects and that, to my co-host's point, sort of, for lack of a better term, like monster movie style appreciation that people can get from it and fun that people can have with it. I really appreciate it for that. And then what for me, what his other Gabe said about the movie just taking him back to his childhood. Any movie that you make about a property has the potential to go bad. I think we saw that in the 2010s with the Power Rangers movie, where so many people wanted to be transported back to their childhood and didn't get that. So the fact that so many people have the same story as Gabe here about, sitting down in that chair and being an adult and looking up at the screen and just feeling like a kid again. How can I not appreciate that about a movie? I can't slag on Michael Bay for making exactly what people wanted. Just because it wasn't what I wanted. So yeah, I appreciate the movie a lot.
Cool. I want to mention the chat real quick because sorry, they dropped a couple of names. Travis talking about iRobot. I believe he said Men in Black 2 was on there. Phone Booth. I love Phone Booth. That's my favorite.
You broke my name.
Joel Schumacher movie. That's actually my favorite Joel Schumacher movie. Hancock, Crank 1 and 2. Crank movies rule. And then I like that Bernie brought up Bernie Mac, which rest in peace. I love Bernie Mac.
Love Bernie Mac.
With the Transformers movies, I never played with the toys. And by then, I don't think there was any current TV show. But what I did know, every time I saw a new movie between 2006 and 2007, there was a teaser for Transformers that was everywhere. Did not show the Transformers, barely showed any footage of the movie. But it lets you know what you were going to see, and then the title's transformed into the title Transformers, and it's summer 2007. And I remember sitting in the theater. Anytime I went to go see a movie, the crowd, you would hear the whispers, and everybody was very excited. When I did see the movie, it felt like an event. I would see movies at Lake Street Theater in Oak Park, and anytime I see a movie there, they cheer for anything. They gave any movie a standing ovation. Transformers was one of those. Like everybody, it just felt like a crowd-pleasing big summer epic that you had to see. It felt like it's so weird talking about movies now, like Ant-Man 3 or like Shazam. And it feels like people forget about these movies like 2 days or 3 days after they come out. And they're just like, all right, what's the next thing? Like, I want to know what's the next thing I got to see. But then it's just
I like how you worded that.
It's like we're addicts or something. It's just like they're
you're absolutely right. Yeah.
But it felt like with those movies, like even like 2007, I think, man, like what movies was I trying to see? Like The Simpsons, everywhere. That movie was everywhere.
Oh yeah.
Transformers was everywhere. When I saw it, I remember like I'm sitting in this theater and it's like a mixture of like, it's young and old people of every different background. It's just packed. This is an old school theater. If anybody's ever been to Lake Street Theater, it's like it could probably sit like 500. Or like it's huge. It goes down. It's big, and everybody is just on their feet clapping. I remember laughing with the entire. Like it's one of those experiences. Looking back on the movie, I still enjoy the movie. I actually really like Transformers, and I understand that some people don't dig it. But for me, when I go to the cinema, I want to feel like that, 12 years old again, 11 years old, and watching a movie in that way with that audience and feeling like this is really fucking cool. We're watching right now. Also, I think Anthony Anderson's the best character in that movie.
He's hilarious in it.
And
Anthony
his cousin
Anderson
who's
is-
playing Dance.
It's definitely the first time I noticed him. Yeah.
Anthony Anderson is very underappreciated in his career, I think. So good to
is.
hear
I
his
think
shout
Well,
out.
now
It's a really
he's a
fun
star of a
guy.
TV show now, so I think
Yeah.
he broke out as
Right.
as somebody
Blackish
that
is like
everybody
one of the
remembers.
biggest shows
Did
on
he
TV.
break out
It is a
though
big show,
because
yeah.
he got skinny? Like when he was like big and fat, it was like a good side character. You got the funny fat guy. Now that he's skinny, hey, let's make him a leading star now.
That is
I think that's
interesting you
probably
say
what
that because
happened.
they did push him
Yeah.
as that in like every movie, like Kangaroo Jack. He's the funny fat
Kangaroo
sidekick.
Jack.
Every movie. What
Is
was
that
that
on
movie?
anybody's
He did
list? Kangaroo Jack? No.
I was hyped for Kangaroo Jack as a kid. All those commercials, they play it during Nickel. It's so weird thinking about that movie being pushed as a children's film when it's like secretly rated R somewhere in some executive's room. There's an R-rated cut of Kangaroo Jack.
Well, there was a Cartoon Network animated spin-off.
Yes.
I think it was a movie, might have been a show. I saw the spin-off many times, and I never saw the actual Kangaroo Jack movie.
It's a
I think
weird
I checked
movie.
Yeah. God, Kangaroo Jack. That's you guys awoke something in me, I guess.
Not that bad. Kangaroo Jack. Bring it
Oh
on.
shit! What
I'm
have you
writing
done?
down a note.
What have you
Writing
done?
down an actual note.
Oh boy.
Okay, who is next? We want to. Okay, so that was Gabe with Transformers. Connor, what's your next pick?
So I had a hard time because I feel like a lot of the bigger movies did not resonate with me as much. But so I literally Googled the term blockbuster film to make sure I was not going away from that definition. And so, something that would be categorized as highly popular and highly financially successful is a movie that I consider the film of 2009 that most people don't consider the film of 2009, which is Inglourious Bastards. God, like I can't appreciate this movie enough. It's not my favorite of Tarantino's work, but he has this knack of making movies that should be made for like 20 people in their basement, and somehow everybody loves them because he does it so well. And this is one of those movies. I mean, on the surface, like a reimagining of the history of Nazi Germany is something that I don't think a lot of people would have considered themselves eager to go to the theater and see. But he just made it so fun in certain parts, scary and brooding in other parts. And man, I can't sing the praises of this movie enough. It's very successful when it came out, and very well deserved for that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I like that movie probably more than any movie I wrote down because I didn't think of it as a blockbuster, which I guess we should have maybe talked about. Is what does make a blockbuster?
I guess it kind of is. It was a huge hit.
When you look
Django
up the
Unchained
definition,
a blockbuster, you know,
when you look up the definition of it, it says typically used to describe a feature film produced by a major film studio, but also other media that is highly popular and financially successful. I'd consider this movie highly popular and financially successful.
But was it popular in the way that Star Wars?
Oh no, I mean it doesn't have the same
Transformers?
appeal.
Mhm.
I don't think. I think that's where it gets tough. Muddy waters.
I think yes. I think it is. You are correct. There's a certain area like what stops being a blockbuster, and what's the area that a blockbuster covers. And I know you brought up Django, and I mean Django made like 400 million worldwide.
It was a huge hit.
I think,
but is
Django's
a hit
more
the
of
same thing as a
blockbuster.
blockbuster?
I think it's
I mean,
more of a blockbuster
that's
than
true.
Inglourious Bastards, honestly. But
Good Will
it was
Hunting
a little
made
bit.
a lot of money.
In Connor's defense, it did come out in the summer. So.
Yeah, but Good Will Hunting made a lot of money. Definitely a big hit. Is that a blockbuster? I mean, there's no action sequences, but Jason Bourne is in it. Batman is in it. Peter Pan is in it. So
Peter Pan.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Well, what about Passion of the Christ? I mean, that made like 700 million. It's a blockbuster.
I mean, hey, by definition, I suppose it may be.
Yes,
it was
it
about
came
the
out in
very
summer.
Those
It was about the
crucifixion
very-
scenes were pretty action packed.
yeah. I mean, you could argue that Passion of the Christ is about the first superhero ever, really.
He went on some sort of a diatribe about that sometime recently, where he said he made the first big superhero film, and his superhero didn't need tights or something.
I remember him saying that.
I was like, okay, all right.
Okay. I saw that movie with my parents, and it freaked me out. That movie freaked me out seeing it.
It's for some people, but
I was like, and what is that? 2004. Yeah, I was like eight or 9 years old by then, and the stuff with the kids attacking him and just biting him and clawing at him while he's like, it's like all in slow motion and they're all demonic. It was the scariest thing ever. At that point, at that point, I've seen Nightmare on Elm Street and all these things. I'm like, oh yeah, that's fun. Seeing these little demon kids attack Jesus, I'm like, oh shit, like this is fucking real. But yeah, that is true. What defines a blockbuster? But I mean, I love Inglourious Bastards. So to me, like in 2009, to me that was like the best movie ever up until that point for me. Like I couldn't stop talking about it. I don't even think I fully understood it at that point. It was just cool. Like it was just a really cool movie. And that's like that. Honestly, I feel like that summer, seeing that movie and the anticipation for it, even though I had seen Kill Bill 1 and 2, I feel like it was Inglourious Bastards that really made me go into like a deep dive of Quentin Tarantino and like being obsessed with his movies.
And no argument for me. I mean, that could be my favorite movie of his, and I think it's underappreciated in many respects. Not necessarily as a blockbuster, because I think Django has the edge there, and Kill Bill Volume 1 certainly. But if we're just talking about like cinema, as we film bros define it, yeah, man. I mean, we could talk about that movie all day, and just the layers of it, the commentary, the filmmaking, the performances. Christoph Waltz did star in another movie that would have been on this list if it was made a year earlier, but The Green Hornet came out 2011, so disqualified.
I thought you were going to say the Three Musketeers for a second.
Yeah, I was a little worried where that was going. I was a little worried.
Is he in the Three Musketeers?
I think he's the villain in that.
Yeah, I thought so.
Paul W.S. Anderson?
Yeah.
I thought so. Okay. I almost brought up Kill Bill instead because I felt like that more fit the idea of what a blockbuster was. But when I was looking at it, I was like, I think there's a much more obvious movie from the year 2009 that people would bring up when discussing blockbusters. So I was like, I'll throw a little monkey wrench in there.
Now I'm trying to see. I'm like, is my mind playing tricks on me? Wasn't he in this fucking movie? Okay, he is in this movie. I've never seen the Three Musketeers from W.S. Anderson. I just remember the commercials and he was in them. Real quick, Bernie says, wasn't Freddy versus Jason a blockbuster? I guess it was a horror blockbuster. It was pretty big.
Perhaps. Yeah.
I saw that movie on a bootleg VHS tape when it came out.
I saw it on a burned DVD.
Yeah.
I went to the theaters for that.
Well, I remember I wasn't able to see it. I remember the posters just being like everywhere for that movie, but I didn't see it until it came on a VHS and DVD.
Kelly Rowland.
Yeah, Kelly Rowland's in that. Yeah.
She is in that.
She is indeed.
Yeah, I'm really wondering how she looks back on that movie. Was that after Destiny's Child broke up?
Maybe
I
she
think
looks
it was
at it
during the height of Destiny's Child.
Yeah, I think
it was right. It was definitely
as Beyonce was breaking out. I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was definitely before she was trying to text Nelly through Excel for sure.
Yeah, I think so. I bet she looks on it a little bit more fondly than Tyra Banks looks back at Halloween Resurrection, but I don't know that we need to bring that movie up right now.
Blockbuster. No,
that's a blockbuster. That's a blockbuster.
I mean, Queen Bee beat them again. She beat Kelly again. She had Austin Powers and Goldmember.
Now, is Goldmember a blockbuster?
I would say so.
It's highly successful.
Maybe, yeah. I guess it's a huge comedy. It came out.
I used to not think that it could be a blockbuster unless it had action. I always felt like action was a big ingredient to what made a blockbuster. But then again, can you say that Twilight wasn't a blockbuster? I don't think you credibly could. That doesn't have action. That's a romance.
Right.
I do remember there being some like scenes like vampires fighting each other and stuff, but even okay, are the Pixar movies blockbusters? Is Up a blockbuster?
Or Shrek?
I would say like Up made like $1 billion, right?
I would say
I would say those Pixar movies are blockbusters for sure.
I think for me, as far as like what like a blockbuster is, it has to have some hype leading up to it, and then have the money that backs it up after it. So like I see in the chat, right? Somebody said like The Hangover, as big as it is now, that was more word of mouth.
That was a sleeper hit. That was like, oh shit, you got to see
like,
this. Yeah.
The Hangover was more like sleeper hit than anything. And there's a lot of movies, and I feel like comedy is hard to do like a blockbuster. Their comedies are more sleeper hits. Like you see it and you're like, oh shit, this shit was funny. I'm gonna tell somebody else to go see it, and then they just become word of mouth blockbusters.
I feel like the only true like of that time period, thinking of like what's a comedy blockbuster, I would think the Austin Powers movies, the Wedding Crashers was huge. That like those trailers were everywhere, and the critic reviews were like way in advance. And when it came out, that movie made like $600 million. Like it was just big.
But see, in those 2000s, for me, those comedies became blockbusters, but it was because of how well Wedding Crashers had done, and that was a sleeper hit. Then you were anticipating movies with Owen Wilson, Vince Vaughn,
right? I guess that's a good way to put it.
And then at that point, like those became like you're expecting these summer comedy blockbusters after like Wedding Crashers hit it big.
How about Superbad? Like that had a ton of hype. I remember around that time. I had a Superbad beanie before the movie even came out in 2007. So like I think that's one. I don't know how well it did financially at that time, but it had a ton of hype where I was growing up.
Superbad did. I think it did really good numbers. And again, I think Superbad was one of those movies you were expecting because it was written by Seth Rogen. Seth Rogen was in there, and then you had
they were pushing the McLovin thing pretty hard.
Oh yeah,
I remember like going to like Hot Topic, and they already had the fake IDs. I think they still sell those at Hot Topic too, or like Spencer's. Yeah, like I remember they were pushing McLovin like everywhere. Like that was like in all the trailers, it was like, "What are you, SEAL?" Like they were pushing that whole encounter, the entire marketing campaign.
Right.
But Superbad was big. I feel like 2007 specifically had some pretty sleeper hits. Like Shia had Transformers, he had Disturbia, the Simpsons movie was big. Transformers, again, it was everywhere.
Simpsons movie, I think, would be, I mean, based on our definition, sounds like blockbuster for
guess, yeah, it's a comedy. It was huge. It made a ton of money, was in the works for a very long time.
Ton of hype around it.
Somebody's got to come out and say, what makes a definitive blockbuster? Because now we're everywhere.
Yep, we are calling out whoever the decision makers are. Tell us what we need to hear.
What the fuck? Like, what the fuck is a blockbuster?
Like, for example, like, the internet, it wasn't early, but it was like very young. Do you guys remember Snakes on a Plane? Like how much of a hype Snakes on the Plane had, right? That made
that's a meme. Blockbuster. But can you meme your way into being a blockbuster?
I feel like Megan might have done it.
Horror is a really
Megan.
Weird, yeah.
Megan might have. Megan
went viral. I feel like that's different than a blockbuster. Like I'm thinking of, this kind of spoils an upcoming pick for me, but Casino Royale. I mean, as soon as it was announced, let's
jump into Casino Royale.
Full steam ahead. Oh, I feel like we're skipping over somebody. Who was the last person?
No, because we could talk about. Because now I think like we could just talk about it because I feel like, on your sense with Casino Royale, I feel the same way with like, for example, Fast and the Furious, the first one. Like I remember watching those trailers and immediately being captivated by Fast and the Furious. Like the trailers was just a trailer, and you got a car that goes underneath the trailer. That first moment that you see the car riding underneath the trailer, I was instantly hooked, and I couldn't wait to see that movie.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, I'm going to see Fast and the Furious. And Fast and the Furious, off their trailers, turned it into what? Fucking 11 movies going to go on to 11 movies off that one single trailer.
Yeah, and Casino Royale, too, like, that's one that, I remember so vividly because when I was a young kid, they had released just before these movies came out, I think around 2004, they released a big like MGM DVD set of all the Bond movies. And so I was growing up on like the Sean Connery films and the Pierce Brosnan movies and the Roger Moore movies and even the Timothy Dalton movies. And so, you know, when it got to the point where this was coming out, like even I as a kid in 2006, I knew what this was. I wanted to see this. You know, I had to wait until it came out on home video. Home video. I really need to stop using that term. When it came out on DVD, I was really excited to see it. Like, you know, I had my parents view it ahead of time just to make sure that they would let me watch it and everything. I was like, yeah, I want to see this movie. So it was like, it broke out of its target demographic, which I think is part of what does make a blockbuster. If you're making a movie for, you know, 18 to 24 or 18 to 34 even, and, you know, kids are wanting to see it. Old people want to see it. Everybody wants to see it. That I think a blockbuster makes, and Casino Royale is an excellent pick for it.
Yeah, I think there's a term in the film industry called a 4-quadrant movie, which is a movie that appeals to every possible sector. You know, young men, older men, older women, young women. It's something that has no sort of boundaries. In terms of the demographic it can appeal. It has a core demographic. I think there's definitely a core demographic to like James Bond movies, but I mean, you know, that was the first James Bond movie I ever saw. I didn't know a single thing about James Bond other than words involving martini and Connery. So it has to have the power, the potential, I think, to jumpstart a something cultural. If not a series of movies, at least it leaves something in the lexicon. And I guess that kind of goes to Superbad, because now we make jokes about McLovin, and a couple other iconic moments from that movie have definitely made its way into pop culture. But you know, you compare Superbad to Casino Royale, and it's like, can you really compare one thing to another?
No. That's a very
they both have chase sequences.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
No, I remember.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Gabe.
Just one more theory. I feel like there has to be production value on screen in a blockbuster.
Okay.
Like an immense amount of work and money went
Yeah.
into what you're saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I think those are good parameters to go off of. No, I was just going to piggyback. Say Casino Royale was like, I felt like that was another one where I feel like Comcast, I think I mentioned this before, Comcast came out on demand. They started putting movie trailers on there. So I'd always go there and see what the trailers were coming out. So it had stuff like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and like Fantastic Four, all these big blockbusters coming. A lot of them shitty movies, whatever. But Casino Royale, I had played the video game. I was obsessed with the video game Nightfire. It was a James Bond video game. That was my introduction to James Bond. And then I saw the trailer for Casino Royale, which is the teaser for Casino Royale is mainly the black and white opening footage. And then it's the title Casino Royale, and they were pushing it as this revamp of the franchise and whatnot. And I remember like the highlight for me is the chase sequence through the construction site.
Oh, yeah.
Like that movie, everything in that movie is perfect. That movie is as perfect of a reboot as you get. And I just like for me, the movies that I watched in anticipation for that were License to Kill, GoldenEye, and From Russia with Love. They were like on demand at that time.
Yes, they were.
Weirdly enough, as a kid, License to Kill was my favorite James Bond movie.
That's a really good one.
Yeah. I found later on I learned that like it was like a lot of people didn't like it because he does things that, you know, like aren't very like James Bondian to do, but as a kid, I thought it was like the coolest movie. Like he's up against like these drug runners and stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, this is fucking dope. But I think Casino Royale is such a good pick. I think that's as good as a Bond movie as you can get. I think.
So my favorite.
And you made a good point too, like the video games around that time, because they had come out with a GoldenEye game on the N64. Mm-hmm. They came out with one for the original Xbox, and they made a From Russia with Love game for the PlayStation 2. All of which I played as a kid. And this was actually the same director as GoldenEye, which was one of the more beloved James Bond films. So they had everything working in their favor, and man, they swung and they hit a home run. I'm glad to see it brought up, man. James Bond warms my heart.
He also directed Gabe's favorite comic book movie,
Green Lantern.
Yeah,
he did make Green Lantern. Yes.
He also made the Mask of Zorro. So let's put some respect on his name.
Yes. That movie is sick. I love
Mask of Zorro. Is awesome.
Is that 99 or is that
98?
98.
Yeah.
Damn it.
The
Yeah,
year,
Gabe and I.
Yeah, the year Connor and I were born.
God damn.
You feel old, motherfucker? No, I'm just kidding, man.
Yeah,
what are your thoughts on? I want to hear your thoughts on Casino Royale. Do you have any memory of that?
Guys, I'm gonna get fucking lambasted here because I've never watched a Bond movie.
Really? Okay.
Oh, you've talked about this before. Actually,
Bond has never really caught my attention at all.
That's
like
fair.
I'll see the trailers and I'll be like, all right, that looks interesting, but like I just like the only thing I have with Bond is playing GoldenEye on the 64, and that's the only introduction to Bond I have. Other than that, I've never seen a Bond movie. So I have nothing to add for Bond either on here.
That's fair.
No, then do you have another pick?
Well, he did talk about Fast and Furious, which I think is another one that like that one I think is a little bit more surprising than some of our other picks so far because there was really not too much like behind it that would have given everybody a ton of hype, you know, like at that time, I think Vin Diesel's biggest movie at that point in time was still Saving Private Ryan, right? It was just a couple years after that movie came out. So like, it wasn't like, you know, he was such a big star. It wasn't like Paul Walker was like the biggest star. He wasn't a small time actor either, but it just it sort of just came out of nowhere and it made a ton of money, and then look where it is now. I mean, they're about to make the 10th movie this year, so
yeah, that is an example though of movies that got bigger and bigger as time went on. Like I consider the 10th movie a blockbuster, but I wouldn't have considered the first one a blockbuster. And let me posit something else: if it's not a movie that would have like a line to the admissions or to the box office, then I don't think of it as a blockbuster, right? And I think that's the difference between a sleeper hit, which I consider the first movie, and something like, you know, a Star Wars, a Casino Royale, maybe. Like, people can't wait to see this movie.
Well, see, I have a cousin who's into like car culture, right? Always, and Tony knows him. He's always he's always you know, fixing his Mustang, and he's big into it. So like Fast and Furious to me, like I said earlier, like when you saw that trailer, when you initially saw that trailer, and I think I saw it like on a DVD like trailer, like coming soon, whatever. And it had that amazing scene where the cars driving underneath, and it was black cars in the trailer, like that piqued your interest. And within like car culture, which is a huge subculture genre, whatever, that movie was like, everybody was like, I want to see, you know, Fast and Furious. You're talking about, you know, Honda Civics, you know, you're talking about like, you know, updating cars and modding them. And I think they crossed over from being like one of these like, you know, cultural things, and then all of a sudden like everybody got in on it. Like everybody went to go see that movie. I can't remember like somebody not saying like, oh, I didn't see Fast and Furious back then when it came out in 2001. Like back then everybody went to go see Fast and Furious. It's like how big that movie was. Well, and like you said, it was like nobody big. Like you're right, nobody big. Yeah. I think Paul Walker had done She's All That. He played that douche in that. You know, Vin Diesel hadn't done that much, and Michelle Rodriguez was coming off, I think, her first movie, which was Girl Fight at that point.
Oh, that's a good movie. Yeah.
It is.
Would she have done Resident Evil at this point?
No.
Or was that 2001?
That was after. That was 2002, 2003 for Resident Evil.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's interesting too, because it's funny that you mentioned this in the Blockbuster picks, because I specifically remember being a young kid and just watching people flood into the store every time they put new copies of Fast and Furious out. And they would just, almost every time I went in there was no more Fast and Furious copies left. but to this day, the copy that I own is from a Blockbuster that went out of business. So it's funny that we bring it up when talking about Blockbusters.
But see, and then at that point, it's like people then all of a sudden wanted to modify their Honda Civics and their freaking Jettas and all these other cars like came out, and you had these these rice burners.
Yeah. It's a good balance between like what a blockbuster is now and like what would be considered like now a sleeper hit, where it's just like it was big at the time and it was huge, but it's only grown to the point to like now all they have to do is put fast in a title and it makes $200 million.
Listen, I've told Tony because I really absolutely love another franchise that I absolutely love is Fast and Furious. And I've told him like we should make a Fast and Furious podcast. Just talk about.
We've been talking about it. We've been talking about it. And I love the Fast and Furious movies too, but it's weird because as a kid, I fucking hated Vin Diesel. And like I don't hate
as
anybody.
An adult, I don't like Vin Diesel.
Like I like Vin Diesel, and I think he's actually a really underrated actor. He did a movie called Find Me Guilty, and I thought he was great in that. He also has a great. I'll go ahead.
No, just he did that with Sidney Lumet, so like I don't think people realize just how credible of an actor he is.
He is, and he also did this short film where he was trying to get his acting career started. For anybody that wants to make short films, I think this is a really cool short. I forget what it's called, but it's about him as a struggling actor, and he wrote, directed, starred in it. It's really, really funny, and the whole thing is about how he can't get roles because they can't narrow down like what ethnicity he is. It's like a running thing in it, but it's really cool. But I hated Vin Diesel as a kid because my dad and his brother were obsessed with Vin Diesel. They thought he was like the coolest guy in the world. And this is when he's making Fast and Furious. He made A Man Apart, Triple X,
Pitch
Chronicles of
Black.
Riddick, Pitch Black. Like I'm like, jeez, why are we keep going to see this fucking Vin Diesel movie? And like every movie he's super serious in the poster. He's looking away. There's something behind him. And I didn't really appreciate the Fast movies until the second and third one. Primarily the third one because I was at that right age where like they had Bow Wow in it. I'm like, oh, I love
Tokyo
Mike
Drift.
Bow Wow's in this movie.
Tokyo Drift.
And I feel like that's where the movies really like, for me, got really, really fun. But I think that first one is, I think it's a really good pick. But it is true. Like, is it a blockbuster? Isn't it a blockbuster? But yeah, I wouldn't argue with you because I don't think I dislike any of the Fast and Furious movies. I actually enjoy all of them. So
nice.
Yeah, even Hobbs and Shaw.
What's another pick you want to throw out there, Tony?
So I was going to throw out obvious ones, but then Gabe at the beginning talked about, I don't want to do obvious, but I'm like, fuck.
You can throw out obvious ones. Hey, man. You're the host.
No, I'm not telling you what to do on your own show.
No, I don't want to be basic. So actually, I want to throw out one. I'm going to throw in one that's kind of a curveball because I feel like this should have been a big hit, and maybe it would have been in another life, but it wasn't. It bombed. And it came out at a interesting time because this summer was huge. This was one of the biggest summers of the 2000s, I feel like. And we had a renaissance of comedies with Step Brothers, Tropic Thunder, Pineapple Express. We had The Dark Knight, Iron Man. And right in late May, there was a movie that came out, which I feel like the internet, like everybody loves it now. But then I remember everybody just dogpiling this movie. And that was Speed Racer, a movie that probably should have been a big hit, cost a shit ton of money. And I remember really enjoying it. And it's a movie that I try to revisit from time to time now. And I think it's one of my favorite movies from the Wachowskis. I think it's up there with the first Matrix. For me, like in terms of filmography, I think that first Matrix is amazing. And then I would probably put Speed Racer right at number 2. And I saw it mainly because at that point I had seen Iron Man so many times, and I think my parents were tired of taking me to see Iron Man. And The Dark Knight obviously wasn't out yet, so it was one Saturday we'd go to matinees. And I think this was right after. I think it had been in theaters a while because I remember seeing it right after Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was a blast. And I still think it holds up. I think it's a movie that. I think it has a lot of visual flair. It's super fun. I don't know anything about the animated show. I never watched it. It's like from the 60s. So what would I have known about that? But I remember there being a huge marketing push. Like they had toys at McDonald's and stuff, and the
commercials were everywhere.
The commercials were everywhere, but I also remember like nobody wants to go see it. So I really enjoyed that movie. I wanted to throw it out there because I'm like, it's not really because it bombed, but
it's not a blockbuster, but a FLOPBUSTER.
Yeah, it's a FLOPBUSTER. There we go.
Yes.
You guys are.
But pros. You know what? It's highly rated. Like on Letterboxd, I think it's got like a 3.7 or something like that.
It's at a 3.3. I did pull it up.
Okay.
3.3, which is solid for a movie that bombed.
I think that's pretty solid for a movie that bombed at that time.
It does not qualify for our show, which is surprising. Because everybody's been saying, hey, it's not that bad. It's been one of those underdog movies that people are trying to salvage the reputation of. And they must have done some good work because 3.3, that's pretty good. I know some movies that are considered classics that are below a 3.3.
Yeah,
that's true. I have seen that. Look, Letterboxd works in weird ways. I feel like once the internet gets a hold of something, they're either gonna lift it up or they're gonna dogpile all over it. Like I don't know. Like I'm trying to think of a movie that recently. I feel like Halloween Ends is like a 2.0. And I know like half of us in this group like it, the other half dislike it. It's interesting how Letterboxd works, but
yeah, it's a good gauge about like how audiences feel at that exact moment. Because even like movies that when I first joined Letterboxd, Halloween 3, you brought up Halloween movies, was under a 3, and now it sits at a 3. And I think that number is just going to keep getting higher. There's a couple movies that started lower. When we covered the prequel films for Star Wars, they started much lower, and now they're growing in popularity. So it's almost like seeing audience trends in real time, as opposed to like a time capsule of how people felt at that point in time. Which I think it's awesome, but it definitely it's a little weird, when you look up a movie like Speed Racer on Google.
Movie fans are in a toxic relationship. They love something, then they hate it, and then they claim they loved it the whole time. It's not good.
Yes.
Wow. That's a really cool choice, though, man. I really appreciate you throwing us a curveball. And I want to throw a curveball right back.
Oh, no.
And me and Connor actually literally just talked about this movie. And I know he won't agree with me, but God damn it, I love Ang Lee's Hulk. I love that movie. It didn't technically flop. It only made a marginal amount of profit. And since then, it's just been like a joke. Nobody remembers it or nobody likes it. It's just like a movie that people have like dogpiled, as you said. And unlike Speed Racer, I guess, it hasn't had like an official reappraisal. You have weirdos like me out there who will talk about how poetic it is and how spectacular it is and how the CGI isn't that bad for 2003. This was still like Scorpion King era, right? But this is a blockbuster where the key components to what should make a huge summer movie don't work as well. Like the action or like we said, the special effects. It's all the filmmaking surrounding that makes it work for me. The editing style is controversial, but I actually kind of adore it, and it's not even trying to be a blockbuster, but it's forced to because of the nature of the property it's adapting. So it's obviously not one of the best. I didn't really make a good case for it being the best, but you know what? Curveball. I'm throwing it out there.
I think it's fair. I actually, it's funny. I saw that you posted about Ang Lee's Hulk, and I think that very day I saw like 3 or 4 other people on the timeline praising Ang Lee's Hulk. So I think the reappraisal is coming. One of my favorite things about that movie is the toy line and the Hulk hands. So like it gave me that as a kid, and I rewatched it like a year ago, and I enjoyed it. Like it's a feel bad movie. Like it's a downer of a blockbuster, but I don't know. Ang Lee had a vision. I think that's what he was interested in, is telling this universal like monster movie and not so much this grand superhero film. But he does some cool things with the editing, like the panel within a panel things. I don't know. I always enjoyed that one. I felt like that was one of those movies, again, like a Spider-Man 3, where I didn't like really fully realize people hated it. until I like went on the internet and like everybody says they fucking hate this movie. So I like that pick. I saw that at the drive-in when it came out.
That feels like a real drive-in movie, so that's cool.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that one. I'm not the biggest Hulk guy. Like I enjoyed it. Like the Edward Norton one, I thought like was had some cool moments. The Abomination fight was cool, but I don't know. I think the 2003 one, like looking back, might have just more to say. Like it's interesting to talk about it. Like it creates a better conversation other than like what does 2008 Hulk do? It's like, all right, like there's a big fight in the middle of the street. You have the cameo at the end, and that's it. But with like
Edward Norton doesn't want to be the Hulk, but he has to be the Hulk. So
he has to be the Hulk.
That's the movie.
But like I think they find a better balance with Ruffalo anyway. So like I feel like that movie's so weird because it's in the middle. But 2003 Hulk, you could get away with that kind of movie at that time period because nobody knew what these movies were going to be. There was X-Men, there was Blade, Spider-Man was big, and then there was Hulk. So there wasn't a gauge of you have to do this or you have to do that. At that point, they could have made those movies any way they wanted to make them. And Hulk just happened to be like this insane story of like the production story behind that's just insane. And then Ang Lee coming in doing his vision right after Crouching Tiger was just, it's a crazy movie. Yeah. So I think that pick's really cool.
Talk your shit, Connor. Come on,
not
say it.
Well, speaking of large green men, Shrek. No, I'm kidding. No, I am going to reserve my thoughts. If you'd like to see my thoughts, please watch the next episode of Not That Bad.
Oh, you just
it gotta be a little political here. What I will say about it is, I do think it belongs on this list as a movie that is considered a blockbuster for its time because it did make the money that I think it was supposed to. I don't think it made as much as they were hoping it would. But, I mean, if you held every movie to the expectations of the studio or the director, you'd have a lot less blockbusters than we currently have. So, I think it belongs there.
Once peak kids saw it, they were like, what the fuck is this? And I know it took a big dip that second week.
You know, it's sort of like Hulk, and I hold this movie to a much higher regard, but I sort of compare it to Batman Returns a little bit, where like there was a ton of hype around it coming out. People were excited. They go and watch it, and then they were like, no, I think I'm good. And then they just did. And then for a while, it just didn't get much love. And then, Batman Returns, I think, has reached that point where people are starting to reappraise it. And hopefully Hulk reaches that point too, despite whichever way I end up feeling about it. Watch the show to find out. But
I mean, Batman Returns was a hit. I don't think you have to put an asterisk next to that.
I mean, it was the biggest.
There was a backlash,
right?
Yeah, there was a backlash, and I think the fact that Tim Burton and Michael Keaton didn't come back for forever gives people the impression that it must have failed, and that's really not the reason. I think Tim Burton and the studio just stopped seeing eye to eye after that movie. Yes. But I mean, Catwoman is just one of those iconic performances in comic book movie history. And, I mean, say what you will maybe about some of the other things in that movie, but to me, she automatically puts that in that conversation of like pop culture defining movies.
Shit, yeah, bring us back for 90s blockbusters.
You guys should read. There's a script that Tim Burton was trying to push through when Batman 3 was falling apart. It's the Catwoman spinoff, and it's pretty fucking crazy. What the stuff that they wanted to do for that movie with Catwoman was. I read it a couple of years ago. It's fucking weird. But if you guys like Batman Returns, you should read that because it's the same writer. And they came very, very close to making that movie.
I really have to read that, man. I got a Batman Returns poster behind me here on the wall, so yeah, I gotta read that. Thank you for telling me about that. I did not know.
Oh yeah, it's like Gabe. What do you think about Hulk? You must have seen it when it came out.
I did see it. I loved it. And Jennifer Connelly, I thought was the best part of that movie.
The best part.
I think she really brought. The Hulk's a monster, but I think Jennifer Connelly brought him back to you could see him more through her eyes, and she could be more human in this, And so I thought she humanized them more than monster-sized them, for sure.
Right. No, I agree. And I think, it's a tough movie to sell because it's about him working on his daddy issues, right? So, it doesn't scream blockbuster like, oh, come on, kids, let's go see this movie about this toxic father. I'm like, yay. But
I mean, don't all males either have either mother issues or father issues? I mean, that's just the general consensus.
I guess it's kind of relatable, yeah. Okay, I want to wrap up because we've been throwing around a bunch of great picks, and then we got to throw in some lesser ones. What happened to Gabe?
His internet went down.
Jesus, I'll try to get him back in. If we can't, then we'll just continue on.
Yeah, he sent me a message that said lost my internet with a crying emoji. So I think he's working on it.
Okay.
I don't know though.
Where are we? So Gabe threw out Hulk. Connor, is there another one you want to throw as we wrap up the show?
I really just want to throw a little bit more love on the Simpsons movie. I know we've brought it up a few times, but like for me, I was very close with my uncle who passed away a couple of years after this came out. But he was such a huge Simpsons fan. He got me into it. I have a huge collection of all the old action figures they used to come out with. I still, to this day, if I want to laugh or I need to be cheered up, we'll turn on, I have like a ton of seasons on DVD. I'll throw one of them on. By the way, if you're a big Simpsons fan, don't watch on Disney Plus. It sucks. The quality is awful. But watching the movie for me as a kid was like the biggest thing in the world besides like when Star Wars came out. It was like, this is huge. And it was another one too that had a huge marketing push. Not that it needed one. I mean, all you needed to do was put a poster in a theater and people would have showed up, but there were commercials everywhere, and you couldn't watch any television station or even like, I can't tell you, you brought up on demand. I can't tell you how many times I went on to Comcast on demand in my house in Illinois and just watched that over and over. I watched it on repeat like 20 times one day. I was just so hyped for it. And when it came out, some people were really disappointed with the Simpsons movie, but I thought it was everything I wanted it to be. They took what could have been, a couple of Simpsons episodes if they wanted to do a multi-parter, and they just put it into a movie. It's exactly what I wanted. I'm curious if you guys have any opinions on that, or if you guys are like also big into the Simpsons, because that also I think weighs on how people feel about it, is if they even like the Simpsons as a show or not.
I always loved the Simpsons as a show. I mean, I think back when they started, the provocative nature of, you can't watch the Simpsons, Bart Simpson is bad for you, and all this stuff. Like back when the show was centered more around Bart Simpson, and then as it progressively got older, like the show centered more around Homer. But the Simpsons have always been part. I still sometimes will catch a new episode here and there. I mean,
they're a little tough to watch now. I'll admit it. I mean,
they are, but it's still Disney's bread and butter at this point, still, right?
And it's still funny sometimes. I mean, they're like, watching new episodes can be a little depressing, but they can still get a laugh.
They can.
I still watch the new Treehouse of Horrors, and I feel like it's good.
Those are always good. Yeah, those are always.
I still watch them every time they come out.
I think, and the Simpsons set a precedence, right, for like Family Guy and for South Park and all these later adult animated, shows that came on. Is the Simpsons set that precedent? When that movie came out, though, I remember all the 7-Elevens turned into Quickie Marts. All the Slurpees turned into
the Burger
Squishies.
King had the Clogger.
Yeah,
the Burger King had the crusty burger. So like the marketing push was just huge for that Simpsons movie. It's just, I do think though after the Simpsons movie, the Simpsons TV show sort of like declined. At least for me, it did.
Yeah, and it had been like, don't get me wrong, like it's like amongst Simpsons fans, it's usually like Simpsons episodes, like seasons 3 through 10, maybe 3 through 12 are like really good, and that like takes you into like the 2000s, and then past that, like people really don't love it too much. I did think it took a little bit of a decline after the movie. I think that was like, okay, we hit our peak. We released this big movie. We made a ton of money. It was time for the downslope. I don't think it's been as sharp as many people say that it has been. But I mean, I get it, and I get why people would have been a little disappointed. But it was everything for me. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this movie So
Oh no,
piggybacking up what you said with your uncle. Oh my God, he's gone again.
Oh no, he's elusive.
Piggybacking what you said about your uncle.
Damn Owen Wilson.
Yeah, dude, I'm not kidding. I have almost broke out in laughter several times based on that.
It was
Thank
so
you for whoever put that.
That's the only comment he wrote too. It was just who's Owen Wilson that he loved.
That makes it even better. Oh God,
he just popped in and said, "Hey, you guys got Owen Wilson."
That guy? Oh, that was great.
But with The Simpsons, the movie felt big, and my uncle was huge in me falling in love with The Simpsons because going to my grandmother's house, my mom's mom, not my dad's mom. My dad's mom had cable and an entire DVD and VHS collection. That's where I started watching movies and falling in love with movies. But my mom's mom didn't have that. She had basic cable, and then on VHS she had these two Simpsons episodes. It was Marge versus Itchy and Scratchy and Bart the Daredevil, and also Superman 2 and Phantom Menace. So that, like, whenever I'd go there, that's what I'd watch. It would be those three VHS tapes and Batman Returns.
Yeah.
So I fell in love with The Simpsons early on, and even moments from my parents like couldn't afford cable. The Simpsons was on at 9 o'clock at night.
Yes, it was.
Followed by the Drew Carey Show.
Yeah, it was followed. Man, you are hitting memory spots. I didn't know I had.
Like it's just for me, The Simpsons is like they're like old friends. It's always reliable. Even new episodes, like I couldn't name you a new episode. I watched one the other day where they go to they went a trip to like Florida and they think they're going to a resort and it's like a shitty resort. It's like real Florida. So like their episodes clearly aren't as good, and usually I use them as background noise. But when it came to the movie was so huge for me. And as a kid, even walking down like Toys R Us, The Simpsons had their own aisle where all the Playmate toys were there.
Yeah.
So like the movie hit on all cylinders for me. Like it was incredibly funny. It was a great audience experience. And I do agree. I feel like, I guess in hindsight, the show did go down after like 10, 11, around there. But I think for a lot of people at large, they really saw the wheels falling off after the movie. I think because the movie was really good. And it had a lot of people involved that were originally working on the show. They worked on that movie went through so many different drafts. They wrote that movie so many different times. And I'm happy you brought it up because that, to me, feels like, again, summer 2007, I think of The Simpsons movies, The Simpsons movie, Transformers, all these things. And I think that movie, I think today it's still a lot of fun. Me and Victoria just rewatched it a couple of weeks ago, and sometimes we throw it on as background noise when we don't know what to watch. And I really like it. And that maybe it's like a 90-minute episode of the show, but I still have fun with it.
I mean, like, as a fan of the show, what do you expect? Like,
exactly.
That's exactly what I wanted to see. Like, make this feel like a big episode of The Simpsons, and they made it feel bigger than Treehouse of Horror. Like, look, Treehouse of Horror is like, they've given us some of the best television, in my opinion, that's any sitcom has given us.
Right.
But I mean, I don't know where they went wrong. I don't think they went wrong at all, and that's why they made a shitload of money with it. So I'm glad they did.
I agree. I see Gabe is back. Gabe is back with us.
I only
slacking on the
Mr.
internet.
T.
Only answer
I
Mr. T now.
apologize, folks, but you guys were talking about the Simpsons movie, which I gladly endorsed to be on this list.
Yeah, we were just talking about how we all, I think we all agree. Gabe, up top, Gabe, OG Gabe. What the fuck are we gonna do to differentiate the two of you? I'm losing my mind here a little bit. Gabe in the green.
Gabe in the green. Yeah.
You said you liked it. Yeah, you said you liked it.
I said
right?
I liked
Okay.
it. Yes.
Cool. So Gabe, since you've been gone, we've just been going around and throwing in some final picks before we wrap up the show, and Connor threw out The Simpsons. If you have one more you maybe want to shout out.
Yeah, that sounds so sad, by the way, since you've been gone. It's like, guys, I got here as fast as I could. Okay, the only one on my notes that I didn't get to shout out is another Not That Bad feature. We talked about this movie earlier, and I'm glad to sing its praises again. Live Free or Die Hard. I'm really not sure why a lot of fans are down on this movie. I think I don't know about a reappraisal, but people are softening their tone to it. I feel like this is now regarded as the last true appearance of John McClane, since we all know how that fifth movie turned out. But there are so many things that work about this movie. I'm not sure if it's more than the sum of its parts, but the sum of its parts are really good. I mean, just the action, it's kinetic, but it's calculated. I described it as kind of like a nationwide cat and mouse game. You know, you have John McClane facing against this computer master played by Timothy Olyphant, and not one of his best performances, but he's just a guy I love to see in movies like this. You know, Justin Long, this is before he really started to shine as a character actor and stuff like Barbarian, but you could really see his talents here, and I like his dynamic with Bruce Willis. I mean, I don't know what else to say other than I literally don't know what else I could ask from this movie. I mean, it has some of the most I don't know, high octane action of the decade that I can think of. I think John McClane is very consistent with his character, and he has all of the traits that made me like the character in the first place. I don't think they lost anything. In fact, I think this new kind of like technological battle he has to fight brings out some of the things that we like about him, like how much of an underdog he is, how out of his element he is. I just love this movie, and to this day I do not understand the hate for it.
I agree. I was shocked when you guys had it on your show and you said it was a 2.9, 2.8 on Letterboxd. I think I wrote when you guys premiered it. I echoed everything that you two talked about in the episode. I think that movie's a lot of fun, and I think I obviously didn't grow up in the fucking 80s. I love the first Die Hard for sure. I think it's a great movie, but for me, like my introduction to like on the big screen, like obviously I've seen these movies on cable, like Rambo and Die Hard, but my first time seeing Rambo in theaters, my first time seeing Die Hard in theaters is Live Free or Die Hard and the John Rambo movie, Rambo 4.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of fun with Live Free or Die Hard. And I think the helicopter sequence is really cool. Those trailers were everywhere. And I think Timothy Olyphant, we can all agree his best role is actually in The Girl Next Door. So I just want to put that to bed. But I approve of Live Free or Die Hard. It's great.
Yeah, and Mary Elizabeth Winstead. And people say it lacks the heart of the first couple movies, but I think it actually has the most heart since the original. I mean, he literally has to save his estranged daughter, and it's as much as he has to save her as he has to save their relationship. So it's just I've heard the complaints, and these are just this is just a time where I just have to disagree with people. I guess I just do not acknowledge most of the flaws. I mean, yeah, the action gets maybe a little silly towards the end. If that's something that really kills a movie for you, if it kills a Die Hard movie for you, I mean, I remember this shit that he was doing with Samuel L. Jackson in the third movie, and that was not a gritty street drama. That was bordering on schlock.
I
love the third one.
I will have no slander.
I want no slander on the third one.
I'm not slandering. That is a compliment. If you know me, that is a huge compliment. Bordering on schlock is that's where you want to be.
Gabe, is this your favorite because it has Kevin Smith in it?
Oh man, no, it's not actually. The third
it's
one
Warlock?
The third one is my favorite.
I agree with you, Gabe.
Just like Lethal Weapon 4 is my favorite out of the Lethal
That's
Weapons.
stupid. That's a stupid opinion.
I don't know that I can go and agree with that
That's
one.
Stupid.
I can agree with you on that Die Hard opinion.
Wait, why is Lethal Weapon 4 your favorite?
Jet Li.
He doesn't do anything in that movie. He has like one good fight in that movie.
Chris Rock, the whole dentist when they're at the dentist office with the laughing gas, just like knocks me on the floor laughing. I think that shit's hilarious. It's fried rice, you prick. It's just fucking hilarious. I don't know. I just fucking
You
love
think
that.
Lethal Weapon 4 is the best Lethal Weapon movie?
It's the one that made me. I don't know. It's 98. We can't even talk about it. It's 1998. Right?
That's a good out, Gabe.
Just let me be there.
Lethal Weapon 4 sucks. I think Lethal Weapon 4 pretty much sucks.
Hold on.
I don't know.
Did Richard Donner direct Lethal Weapon 4?
He directed all of them. Yeah.
He directed all of them. Wow.
I feel like by the time Shane Black stopped having any kind of input, they kind of just made them sitcoms. By the time you get to part 3 and like Joe Pesci's like in real estate and he's like trying to get the Murtaughs to get a new house, and then the 4th one is essentially
he's a private eye.
It's an episode of the Cosby Show with guns. That's pretty much what part 4 is. But of course, that's Gabe's favorite.
I would like a Lethal Weapon where Merton Riggs go after Bill Cosby.
Well, I'm just gonna say this. I'm gonna sidetrack that and just say, Gabe from FLOPBUSTER, please never change and please come back on our show. That's all I want.
I'll come whenever you guys want me on.
Oh, that's great. Please do never change your movie opinions, my friend.
No, never tell anybody Lethal Weapon 4 is your favorite again. Like, I don't understand.
Lethal Weapon is my favorite. Lethal Weapon 4 is my favorite.
Tell everyone.
It's the only
you have the
one
devil on your shoulder and the angel on your shoulder, right?
Mel Gibson doesn't even have a mullet in that
Let
movie.
everybody know.
He doesn't even have a mullet in that movie. I mean, how that automatically takes off like a star and a half.
Hey, what can I say? Love it.
Chris Rock brings down the whole movie. He's like the least funniest character in that movie.
Pesci is hilarious. They got the shark, the way that it opens up with the shark on the boat. It's funny. The whole thing is funny. I love it.
I bet you like the movie Gone Fishing with him and Danny Glover too. I bet it's like your favorite Danny Glover movie, Gone Fishing with Joe Pesci and Danny Glover.
Stop yourself.
Okay, Gabe, do you have anything you want to add before we start wrapping up?
I'm just gonna go really quick. I loved X-Men, the first one, because it brought back the entire like superhero to the forefront before Spider-Man. For anything, Wolverine was awesome. Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. I fucking absolutely love that one.
Yeah,
I count it. Yeah, who didn't want White Castles after seeing that? Like, to me, the ultimate stoner movie.
Yeah.
And I think those are the two that I just wanted to highlight here.
Made White Castle more popular after, like, their sales skyrocketed.
Yeah, I think it basically brought White Castle back.
I think it did. Like, White Castle was struggling.
Cody Leach just said Lethal Weapon 4 is awesome.
God damn it, Cody.
Damn. Okay. All right.
But
I'm not the only one.
That's the question. Is it Cody's favorite?
That can't be Cody. It's got to be maybe a bot account or something. You know those bot accounts that say you want you want a free gift or a PS5 or some shit?
Listen.
You keep talking shit on his opinion. He's not coming back on the show.
Okay. No, I don't hate Lethal Weapon 4.
I need to rewatch this.
It's definitely my least favorite, but I just wanted to show
Lethal Weapon 4.
Didn't even stick in my brain last time I saw it. That's amazing.
But thanks for stopping by, Cody.
I do love Lethal Weapon as like the best Christmas movie over Die Hard.
I agree. I actually agree with that. Lethal Weapon's one of my favorite movies of all time.
If anybody wants to see us talk about another big movie from the 2000s with Cody, just check out our episode on Hollow Man. That came out last week. Yeah,
loved Hollow Man.
Yeah, as far as I think that's, if I can close out with one final thought from my side, I was thinking, where does horror fit into this conversation? Right. But I feel like Hollow Man is one of the few horror movies I can definitely say was a blockbuster. It's not one of my personal favorites, although I had plenty of good things to say about it in our episode. But yeah, that was a blockbuster.
I know Tony's trying to close out, but what you said with horror, I think I could think of two movies that people were just anticipating in the 2000s, and Tony may not agree with me, but both of them were directed by Rob Zombie. The first one was House of 1,000 Corpses.
Yeah,
people were anticipating Rob Zombie's directorial debut.
Made a ton of money too.
Yes, and then the second one would be Rob Zombie's Halloween, like another hugely anticipated, huge blockbuster. Rob Zombie's Halloween had like the Labor Day weekend record for so long.
Yep.
So I think those two would be like the biggest horror movies for blockbusters for the 2000s.
Well, and one of the comments brought up Freddy vs. Jason too, which I also would put on that level, because that also had like the same amount of hype, made the same kind of money. So yeah, I'd say that horror has its fair share of blockbusters. I think they just need to be graded a little differently. I think,
I feel like, piggybacking off what you guys are saying, A Nightmare on Elm Street, when I saw that opening day, it felt like it should have been a big blockbuster. Like the opening sequence, when you hear the stink of the gloves, everybody jumped, and then the rest of the movie started. And it was really bad. For like 5 minutes, I think everybody in the audience was like, "This is gonna be awesome. It's going to be great." And
Friday the 13th, 2009 could also kind of be counted. I mean, that made a lot of money and people were really excited about it. I mean, Michael Bay was producing that movie.
And I remember seeing the poster for
Platinum Dunes.
Yeah, Platinum Dunes.
And because Texas Chainsaw was like...
Texas Chainsaw was another one.
So much money.
Yeah. Good.
I think all of those Platinum Dune remakes were like, let's take what was, a really like low budget horror movie that has become iconic, and let's pump us. That's not exactly why I liked Hollywood. Yeah. You get the gist now.
You have such a way with words, Mr. Leach.
It's funny that he brought this up because we have a friend, Sky Selenite, and if you ask him what his favorite movie is, he goes, "Man, my favorite movie's Hollow Man." I'd be like, "Well, why?" He's like, "Well, I really like the idea of like you can kind of do what you want," and he sneaks like the sexual assault stuff.
He's like, it's very sexy.
He's like, "Did you think this was like a Porky spinoff?" What movie do you think you were
I will say, I'm always here in the comments for FLOPBUSTER. Anybody who may have come over from our show to catch this, please stick around. You'll see me in the comments all the time. But Sky is one of my favorite people to watch comment because you never know what the fuck that guy's gonna say. So yeah, I'm glad to hear him that he stays on brand even off camera.
That's like his favorite movie. He's in film school. He'd bring it up all the time. It was like Hollow Man and Boogie Nights. And just
Boogie Nights. Wow. Okay.
It was like the only two movies he's watched.
I would love to know why he likes Boogie Nights, knowing why he likes Hollow Man.
We got to interview this guy, man. This is great.
Oh no, he'll probably come on at some point. But he was obsessed with. Like every answer, I would have film classes with him. Every answer would be Hollow Man. It was so weird. It's like everybody's saying like fucking like Scott Pilgrim or like Casablanca or something. And he's like, "Yeah, Hollow Man. It's got Kevin Bacon. He's my favorite actor." And it's like,
I respect the hell out of this guy.
Yeah, you gotta respect it.
He saw Kevin Bacon's package on Friday the 13th and decided that was.
And he saw his ass in Hollow Man, and he was all
blew
about
his
it.
mind.
That's what he meant about sexy.
And for a second, you see Kevin Bacon's like deep.
We don't need to talk about this.
You brought up Kevin Bacon's ass, did you not? All right, we have to bring it back full circle, okay? From Friday the 13th to Hollow Man. He had a destiny. And I think that destiny was fulfilled in the Hollow Man. Absolutely.
Good Lord.
Don't be ashamed, Connor.
Before we wrap up, guys, I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to shout out a couple movies really quick, and then I want to quickly thank Connor and Gabe from Not That Bad for coming on, because this was a lot of fun. I could go on for like another hour talking about any movie with you guys. But I have to go pick up Victoria. I made her wait. She's stranded by all these crackheads.
Oh, no.
But no, not really. But I want to shout out a couple movies really quickly. Movies that I felt like were just big at that time period. One was 300. I feel like we had so much trouble. Me and my dad kept trying to go in IMAX to see this at Navy Pier in the city, and it was always sold out. Always sold out. We finally got tickets, I think, on its like last day. But I felt like that movie was huge just because of the IMAX thing. X-Men 2, Gabe, you mentioned the X-Men movies. I love those early X-Men movies, and X-Men 2 would definitely be on there as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's it. And I want to thank you guys for stopping by, and you're welcome to come by anytime. We love having you on.
Oh, thank you for having us, man.
Thanks a lot, man.
It's a thrill. Every time you invite us on, it's a no-brainer. So, we're thrilled to come on, and, you guys are always welcome back on our show too. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Gabe, you got anything else to say?
You're welcome back on, Gabe. Only if you choose Lethal Weapon 4.
Listen.
What is the rating of that movie? It's probably got to be at least a 3. It's probably
Let me find us here.
Listen, if you guys want to do a whole Lethal Weapon 4 thing, I'm totally game.
Whole Lethal Weapon 4 thing. Yeah.
It's not eligible. It's got a 3.
I think it's got a 3. Yeah, it's got,
Okay,
It's got a 3.
One of us has to
Wow.
go in and give it like a 0.5
Yeah.
just so we can talk about it.
Just give it
And
the opposite of a not that bad bump. Bump it down so we can talk about it.
All right,
Wow.
fantastic.
All right.
All right, I guess we'll wrap it up then. Thank you everybody for jumping in. I know there's a ton of comments we couldn't get to. I saw Curious Jojo in here. Good to see you, man. Bernie was giving some. I know Travis threw out the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Cody, thank you for stopping in. And then Mike Jones joining us at the end. He says Hollow Man is underrated. So there you go. We got a couple of Hollow Man fans in
Check
the
out Not That Bad's podcast on Hollow Man.
There you go. Check out the episode with Cody and Not That Bad about Hollow Man. Make sure if you haven't already to like, comment, subscribe, share, check out Not That Bad on their YouTube, on their Spotify, and then you guys are also on Apple as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Almost all the podcast platforms.
Yeah, we can find you there, and I guess you'll see an episode with Gabe talking. Oh no, I guess you can't do the episode with Gabe now.
He'll find
Gabe. You're just gonna have to watch Lethal Weapon.
We'll find another movie. I hope. unless Gabe only likes very well regarded movies, then I guess he can't. You cut back on.
That's fair.
I like terrible. I have a terrible taste in movies, according to Tony. So I'm sure we can find something.
We'll see.
But anyway, I want to thank you guys for coming on. I want to thank everybody else for watching, and we will see you next time. I'm doing this on my phone, so let me see if I can hit the. All right, here we go. All right, see you guys.